Talk, and I like to talk about common nonsense. In other words, writing ridiculous poems. So what makes something funny? Whether it's me wearing a life jacket on dry land, to sun protecting hats when there's no sun out and when I'm inside, or me carrying around a cushion when I'm standing up. I don't know what makes something ridiculous, but I think this would count. Whether it's your grandmother farting in church or Calvin getting attacked by a school lunch, funny things are funny because they are unexpected. I'm hoping that none of you expected that the calm Adora Talk would be wearing a cushion, two hats, and a life jacket inside on dry land, and so I'd say that's unexpected. I'm hoping. For example, you wouldn't expect a sneeze to be wet enough to soak someone's shawl or loud enough to be heard in outer space. And let me now remove my vestments, hopefully without strangling myself, although messing my hair significantly. That's better. So, to make a poem ridiculous and fun, exaggerate a real-life event. So, for instance, I was wearing 2 hats and a life jacket. Now, somebody who's exaggerating could say I was wearing 4 hats, 8 life jackets, several arm protectors, 2 knee protectors, something like that. I think that would be exaggerated quite a bit. So you can really exaggerate, and that will make things ridiculous and fun. I could turn a small mishap in the kitchen into a dramatic, electrifying poem. So let me show you how I could do that. Let's say my sister is flipping pancakes, and she maybe spills a little batter onto her leg or onto her foot or something, and that's no big deal. Now, if I were to exaggerate that, then I could say that my sister was wearing a $10,000 Swarovski crystal embedded dress that was on loan from a friend, and she was cooking pancakes, and she throws the pan up in the air, and then the pancake and the pan hover like that for a minute second, and then the pancake leaps out, does a double twirl, pops around in the air like no good pancake should do, and then it falls splat onto my sister's head, oozing bright beet red batter down her formerly spotless white Swarovski crystal embedded $10,000 dress, just as my dad pulls into the driveway ready to take her to her first concert at Carnegie Hall. Now, in reality, maybe my sister's dress was really $10 or $20, and the crystals are made out of plastic, and it had been given to her a long time ago by a friend who didn't care what happened to it. And her concert wasn't really at Carnegie, it was at maybe Meidenbauer, which is a much smaller, although I'm sure a very respectable concert hall. And it was in an hour, and my dad arrived an hour later. So with a little compacting, condensing, adding, and deleting, we can exaggerate and make a dramatic, electrifying poem. On some more important affairs. All of you have sneezed before, right? I bet so. I'm not sure that all of you have gotten half of your family sick with that sneeze, though. Or that you have killed some people with that sneeze or soaked people's shawls. So I wrote a poem about a very improbable sneeze. The sneeze. I beg you to excuse me, please. Oh, actually, I apologize. There is a bit at the top here. I must hold in a dreadful sneeze. I beg you to excuse me, please. I know my trumpet is a great disgrace. I'm willing to accept my loss of face. I sneeze much to the public's dismay. I humbly beg you for me to pray, for I have the feeling that my soul is torn. It's not only my throat that's too well worn. I know that Lady Cunningham was disgusted. I know that I'm a scoundrel, not to be trusted. I know that I shouldn't have come at all when I knew I might ruin the Countess's shawl. My grandaunt had to sell her brass samovar. My sneeze and the storm were quite on par. The lessons at school could barely be heard because I always sneezed through every word. And the history of 1902. Achoo, 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 achoo. Now half the household sick, the others died. My grandma spanked, and my grandma cried. I swear now that I'm sneezing with fear, but I can't squeeze out a morning tear. And I can tell you it's no use to fight. There's a guard outside my door every night. I only got hankies for my present this year, that and a book of small font Shakespeare. I wish that my sneezes went to outer space. That way they wouldn't be such a waste. Maybe an alien would hear the noise and know of other living boys. Send an expedition to planet Earth. And then my sneezes would have some worth. But now from dreams I must retreat and try not to sneeze. I have to look neat to attend a party of great renown, the most important party in our town. All I can hope is that I don't have to talk, because a sneeze will creep out like a slug from a rock and earn me another reproving stare. Oh no! Here's a sneeze! I tell you, beware. Achoo! I sneezed on the sandwiches, soaking the cheese. I sneezed on the silver for catering fees. I beg you to excuse me, please, oh please, forgive me for my deplorable sneeze. Thank you. And here are some quick definitions of words in case any of them are not familiar. Scoundrel, that means a crook. A samovar is a large Russian-style tea kettle. Renown is fame, so the most important party in our town with lots of renown, that would be very famous. Reproving, disapproving, or scolding. You say that I shouldn't exaggerate so much? Achoo! You insult me! Exaggerating can make something as mundane as a sneeze into a life-threatening, terrifying situation. And funny. We can use our imaginations to exaggerate real-life events and turn them into exciting, interesting poems. When you realize that a sneeze can become an epic, you realize that the world around us is teeming with poetry ideas. For example, you could take a page out of Calvin's book and write a poem that is an exaggerated description of a gross meal. I do this in my poem, Lunch, which I did also advise you to read in Dancing Fingers. It's somewhere in Ridiculous Poems. In fact, poems provide a creative way to vent our feelings about lots of things we don't like. It's a free country. You can write a poem about how much you loathe homework, eating your vegetables, or other despicable tasks. Because you can get lots of inspirations for poetry from the things you see all around you. So be sure to take a good look. Trees, houses, coats, sidewalks, plastic containers, even snowflakes on the ground. Use your imagination. Is really a very important part. And when it comes to poetry, you really don't have to stick with the facts. If you're writing a book report or an article for a newspaper, you would want to be factual and clear. But in a poem, you can do pretty much whatever you want. For instance, you could look at an everyday item and imagine what it would be like if it had magical powers. So let's say a piece of paper. Now, or actually it's a CD case. If I imagined that it had magical powers, then I could say this piece of paper would automatically fold itself up as soon as a person wrote to the last line. So it would be an excellent piece of paper for letter writing, for instance. You could write a poem about a tree that is really the castle of a squirrel king, or you could write a poem about a coat that makes the wearer invisible. Let me see if I can find one of these. Maybe this will double as my coat and makes the wearer invisible. Well, it doesn't really, but I can do that in a poem. I can say this life jacket or this coat makes the wearer invisible, even if it doesn't really in real life. You can also look at an everyday object and, instead of writing about it, write about what it brings to mind. For example, if you see an ordinary beetle crawling on the ground, you could write about the Egyptian scarab beetle, which was said to have magical powers. Write a poem that exaggerates a real-life event. Write a poem about an ordinary object that has magical properties. So looking at your carpet on your floor, you can imagine that it's a fire.